Dubai has gone to the extent of creating a shopping festival just because to promote tourism. People used to go from one place to another not just because of tourism, but that was the reason how commerce, trade and industry started flourishing in this country. International tourism, it's all about visiting places other than your country, which means you are stepping outside the borders of your own country. Good morning and welcome to the session 4 of Unit 5 in EDP, where we are going to talk about tourism development. Now, in the world, what is more exciting than visiting other places, other country and seeing what is there? So tourism is the most exciting part of business that actually connects the people and the world together. So let's move forward and try to understand what tourism is exactly all about. It is one of the world's fastest growing industry and has a major foreign exchange and employment generation for many countries. It's one of the remarkable economic and social phenomena that I would like to talk about. Why is this? Apart from the corona and the pandemic, that's COVID-19 that happened during the recent months, until the beginning of 2020, tourism is the biggest and the fastest growing industry in the world. No doubts about it. Why? Because directly, indirectly, it has provided to millions of people jobs, and it has been able to create a lot of foreign exchange reserves for many countries. Now, when you look into a country like France, when you look into a country like Switzerland, or when you start looking into a country like, let's say, Hong Kong or Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and all these places, they've all been thriving just because of tourism. In fact, Dubai has gone to the extent of creating a shopping festival just because to promote tourism. So you can imagine the impact of tourism on any country worldwide. Tourism is not just about visiting places, but it is about connecting people to their thoughts, connecting people to their ideas, to their aspirations, as well as providing them entertainment in the long run. So when you see this, the world tour, it's derived from the Latin word tournus, which means to say a tool for making a circle. So which means when you look into the world, which is circular in nature, how much time would it take for you to just go around this world is a very, very interesting question. Now, that is where you will start seeing that when you see people moving from one place to another place, this is exactly the thing that we are talking about. This is exactly the exciting part of the journey that comes into picture. Why? Because when you look into the tourism factor, for a minimum of period of 24 hours to maximum of 6 months, a person can take a tourist visa and can go around the world. So it's a very, very exciting journey. It's a very, very interesting factor to see people traveling from places to places, trying to explore new things, trying to see different activities altogether. Followed by, according to the definition of WTO 1993, tourism encompasses activities of persons traveling and staying in places outside their usual environment, not more than one consecutive year for leisure, business or other purposes. Now, tourism is something that provides a venue for any person to travel from one point to another point over a time period of 1 year, that's in a consecutive mode, and it does not make you stay there permanently. Why do people travel from one point to another point? That is because they want to see places. That is because they want to see the amount of growth. That is why they see that while going to other places, other cities altogether, that gives them an excitement, that gives them a factor of where they are able to see different things, different features, different places altogether. So this becomes a very, very important thing in terms of understanding the tourism. Now, September 27th is celebrated as the World Tourism Year, no doubt about it. And this is chosen on the day in 1970. The statutes of the UNWTO were adopted, and this is called as the United Nations World Tourism Day Organization. The purpose of this day is to raise awareness of tourism within the international community. The purpose of making tourism a real purpose, a real beneficial ideology altogether is to see that you are trying to promote tourism not just as an activity but as a factor of growth, as a factor of promotion altogether, through which you will be able to see successive growth, successive development altogether. So this becomes a very, very important activity for each one of us to understand in the long run. This is very, very important factor. Why? Because only through tourism you will be able to connect people, you will be able to raise the awareness among the international community. Now, for example, when we talk about the 7 wonders of the world, people like to just go and see the 7 wonders, not just because they have been illuminated by some geographical facts, but it is because when you travel from one point to another point or one place to another place, you are getting excited, you are getting completely matched by the people, by the thought process, by other kind of activities altogether. So that's why I would always say that the World Tourism Day is one very, very important day through which people get connected, through which people keep moving around altogether. Now, the history of travel and tourism. Travel is as old as the existence of mankind, and probably man at the beginning himself is a traveler. He is a tourist by nature. He has kept on roaming from place to place in search of his different wants and needs. So man by nature, by birth himself is a tourist, no doubt about it. So what he has been trying to do is that he has been moving from one habitat to the another habitat in search of food, in search of shelter, and this movement actually transformed him to be the best tourist or the best person in the world. Why? Because he started learning about the nature, culture, and he started understanding how people are coming in terms of getting together. Now, when we go back to the ancient years of the history, we understand that man existed, or man came out from the features of animal, but then his mind, his ideology is exactly like the animal. His mind does not settle over a common factor. He is never happy of being satisfied in one place. He always wants to roam around. He wants to see the world in his eyes. He wants to experience different climatic factors, different food, different culture altogether. Now, everybody does not get excited by traveling, but everybody gets completely surprised, or sometimes he's been, put on to a different level of experience by traveling. And that's what makes tourism a very, very idyllic factor, a very, very interesting factor to talk about. About 5,000 years ago, changes in climate, the dwindling food and shelter condition, hostile invaders made the people leave their homes and seek a refuge elsewhere, like the Aryans left their homes in the Central Asia due to climate changes. Perhaps this leads to the development of commerce, trade, and industry. Now, when you go back to the history, you will try to understand people used to go from one place to another not just because of tourism, but that was the reason how commerce, trade, and industry started flourishing in this country. People used to exchange goods. They used to take time out to go to these places, understand the climate, understand the nature and the fractions altogether. So when the explorers like Vasco da Gama or Marco Polo, or when we talk about those great Chinese philosophers who have traveled from one point to another point in order to understand about the country, they've always tried to see that this is an avenue, this is a roadmap for them to understand the living conditions of others. Now, because of the harsh weather conditions, because of the unsettled factors altogether, there might be changes, there might be climatic disorders that can come in picture in terms of making the man move from one place to another. And that's how tourism is actually an innovative step through which you make people understand history. At the same time, you make people understand the importance of moving from one place to another. With this, when we talk about the tourism development, the Industrial Revolution, I would definitely say, has been the major breakout or has been the major reason for tourism development, and that is a structure and pattern of the British society altogether. Thus, the economy of Britain was greatly responsible for the beginning of modern tourism. No wonder why people would always love to visit London, apart from all the fancy monuments and some of the best superstructures what they have got across the world, including the London Palace, or when you talk about the the giant wheels or the River Thames and everything that has been flowing through London. This has been one of the primary birthplace for the tourism. Why? Because when the Britishers started getting into the industrial revolution, people wanted to migrate from their place and be a part of the revolution. They started moving out of their place in search of jobs. They wanted to go to these places, seek better jobs, better living conditions, so that they are able to create a better living style altogether. Now, what happened is that it also created a large and a prosperous middle class because of great improvement in transportation systems in later half of 18th century and the first half of the 19th century. So you will be able to see that an increasing number of people started traveling for pleasure as well as for work altogether. So London became one of the attractive centers in the world, including the Big Ben, what we are talking about, and starting up from the different factors which used to make it very, very important for people to go see the modern development, to see the society, to see the changes that has been happening over a period of time. So this is how you would see that tourism has been one of the biggest propellers of economy in the world, followed by the growth in tourism. Now, tourism was originally inspired for the need of survival. Now, let's not forget that factor as we were talking about. Just for the sake of survival, tourism picked up in this world, because people went from one place to another place in terms to look for food, shelter and clothing. And when it started descending down to the various kings and kingdoms, that became a quest to expand the trade and conquer the country. But as we started moving down, the tourism, the transportation started improving, and we were able to connect to vast number of places in a given period of time. Now we started feeling that the world is a small village altogether. Now every country is our neighbor. Every country is accessible provided you have the time, money and energy to visit. So tourism and travel started from the survival process to a satisfaction process altogether. It has made man to understand that every single treat, that is every single place, is a visual treat for himself. He will be able to understand and explore things better when he is able to go there and see it. However, the development of rails, roads, steamships, automobiles, airplanes have all helped to spread that technology. It has been, many times it has been a privilege for the wealthy people, but today tourism has rapidly changed, and with the transportation becoming an affordable practice, everybody is able to visit every single center across this globe and feel happy about the factor that yes, they are also becoming a part of the world traveler. Now, the growth with a demanding needs. Essentially, what we are seeing is that the development of jet travel, the extension of technology, tourism and travel has become the largest and fastest growing industry. Now, if you even look in India, at a time period of 95-96 where there was only one private airline, today we are talking about hundreds of private airlines which started emerging after 95 onwards. And all these airlines were all working towards creating a very, very prospective economic growth or economic story altogether. The reason is that this is the place, this is the situation, or this is where I would like to see that the growth of tourism actually is coming in picture, because airlines are primary drivers of tourism, where everybody is getting connected to the world with an accessible airline, with an accessible growth altogether. So this is probably the fastest growing industry altogether in this world. Now, the tourism and travel have been able to contribute to more than 12% of the world's trade. So you can imagine the amount of impact that we are talking altogether in terms of the economic force. Imagine a world where 12% just comes because of traveling. Imagine a world where 12% of money is just coming because people want to visit places, people want to satisfy their immediate needs and wants. So this is definitely the most growing and the happening place that I would talk all about. Followed by the types of tourism. Now you have two types of tourism which I would like to talk about. One is called as the international tourism. The other one is called as the domestic tourism. When you talk about the international tourism, it's all about visiting places other than your country, which means you are stepping outside the borders of your own country. And when you are talking about domestic tourism, it is all about coming within your country. India being a land of a very rich heritage altogether, it does not have to worry about the international factor, because a lot of people feel that there are a lot of places in India which are to be explored and they have a great value. Probably India in the recent years has become a great destination for many foreign travelers to come here to explore the country in length and breadth and understand its architecture and its ancient history importance. Taj Mahal, which we always claim as one of the wonders of the world, it is not just the one attraction that we are talking about, but there are hundreds of attractions like that which is available in our country, which is trying to talk about this tourism factor altogether. So I would always say that this is a very, very important factor in terms of understanding the tourism and development. With this, I come to the conclusion of this session. I hope and believe that this session was of great help and resource to you. With this, we come to the end of EDP, which is a very, very important topic and chapter in terms of your subject and syllabus. And this will also help you to understand the various concepts on entrepreneurship. With this, thank you once again for joining me on this wonderful session today.